Hey, in this video we are evaluating functions using trig. Still trigonometry, but we are using function notation. Let's see what's given to me here. If you notice, they've defined the f function as the sine function, g function as the cosine function, and they are telling me to use 60 degrees for theta. Also, angle is given in degrees. Based off of that information, when I look at my first question, the first question talks about g function. And I'm like, g function, they're wanting me to use cosine. So instead of g, I write down cosine. Also, they're wanting me to use theta over 2. But the value of theta is given to me, which is 60 degrees. So over 2, that makes it cosine of 30 degrees. And now I finally understand what the question's even asking. I'm just writing this so you can see we're still coming along the same way. G of theta over 2 is basically asking me find cosine of 30 degrees, which we can figure out using our triangles. Cosine of 30 degrees. Now 30 degrees is in the first quadrant, so I'm creating my triangle. The first quadrant, that's 30, 60, 90. And we use our special triangle concept. The smallest side would be 1, hypotenuse, which is the largest side, would be twice of the smallest side, and root 3. And cosine is defined as g of theta over 2 is basically cosine of 30 degrees. Cosine is defined as adjacent over hypotenuse. In this case, that's the adjacent and that's the hypotenuse, so root 3 over 2. Unlike the previous questions and the other videos, now the question would have directly asked me this. They could have just asked me, hey, what's cosine of 30? I would have done my triangle in the first quadrant and get it from there. But they didn't give it to me directly. They've given to me in a function format because very soon we're running into functions. Trig ratios are also functions. They have their input, output, domain, range, and all that stuff. So they're just kind of building up on that at this point in time. Let me look at the second one. The second one clearly is using g function also. So they want me to use the cosine function. So instead of g, I write down cosine. Also, they're asking for 2 theta. But wait a second, theta is 60 degrees. And then they're saying at the very end, don't forget to square your answer. So let me redefine this. 2 times 60 is 120. They're wanting me to find cosine of 120, find the value, square it. It's like, okay, let's do that using our triangle. So I get to the triangle, I'll do it down here. Remember, we're still in our circle, we're still on the grid. 120 degree angle would end up in the second quadrant because that's a 120 degree angle. And this is where we learned that we cannot create a right triangle with the 120 degree one. Our right triangle will be created with the x-axis. Hence, we're going to need this reference angle. And based off of our a line is 180 degrees, we clearly can tell that this should be 60. And then we get into 30 degree here, and we see that we are in the special triangle, 30, 60, 90 type of special triangle. Except we're in the second quadrant, so just be careful here, we're in the second quadrant. The smallest side will be the one opposite to 30 degrees, so 1, largest side 2, this should be root 3. And the question wants me to get cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse, right? Okay, adjacent is 1, because that's my reference angle, and then adjacent sits right next to it. Over hypotenuse, that's 2, so root the 1 over 2. I'm not sure if you've noticed yet, that 1 that I wrote, we are on the left side of x-axis, and that 1 should be negative 1. Because we're on the negative side of x-axis and not on the positive side of x-axis. And that actually changes our question. Well, this makes it negative half. But don't forget the square. Negative does end up dissolving. 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. And here's the final answer. G of 2 theta whole squared is equal to 1/4. Let's see, let's do one more. Let's do a negative angle probably. What about f of negative theta? That's the question. That's it. Find f of negative theta. And I go back and I realized that f function is the sine function. Like, sure, you're basically asking me sine, and also they're wanting me to flip the sign of the angle which happens to be negative 60 degrees. So like, oh, very good, very good. That's the question. Okay. Now carefully I'm going to evaluate and put my angle on the grid. Negative is telling me to go in clockwise direction. Hence, a negative 60 degree angle will end up in the fourth quadrant. So it's still 60 degrees. The measurement of the angle is 60 degrees. I took care of the direction by going in clockwise direction. So please do notice that we have ended up in the fourth quadrant. All right. Now, obviously this angle is 30 down here. That's a 90 degree angle. Smallest side, largest side, leftover side. And that's a sine question. The sine is opposite over hypotenuse. This is the reference angle. So opposite is created using the reference angle. Root 3 is the opposite. What have I not done here again? We are in the fourth quadrant. Every point in fourth quadrant would be reflected as x comma negative y, right? Because we're in the fourth quadrant, which makes this 1 comma negative root 3. This point corresponds to 1 comma negative root 3. I'm going to go change the sign to negative. So negative root 3 over hypotenuse, which is 2. And there's nothing to simplify. Yep, there's nothing to simplify. F of negative 30 turns out to be negative root 3 over 2. Okay, here we go. These are some examples of functions with trigs. See you in the next video.